Right then, another Premier League game, another chance to... Okay. Hey, what's poppin', people? Welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host, Jan. I do hope you lot are all doing well today. I really do hope that. Welcome back to Football Therapy. I've said that. Welcome to your match preview of Chelsea versus Leicester. Huge, titanic game. Brendan Rodgers, Frank Lampard, Leicester, Chelsea, Foxes, Lions, you know? What the fuck am I saying? Right then, settle in. Do consider subscribing to Football Therapy if you're new to the channel. You might dig it. Daily content, of course, regarding Chelsea Football Club. Bell notifications icon must be checked if you subscribe. Well, it doesn't have to be, but that would be nice. Drop a like to show your support. That would be lovely. Thank you. As we get into today's match preview. Right then, Frank Lampard has done his pre-match press conference. Interesting, I think, that he talked about Timo Werner and how we have to support him and how he knows he will come good. He spoke about Tomori, sort of implying, yes, he is going on loan, but not commenting on the option to buy for Milan. That's interesting. What else did he talk about? He praised and defended Mason Mount just to stay on brand. But seriously though, Mason's been excellent and he deserves no hate. And in regards to this game, the most notable thing Frank Lampard said is N'Golo Kante won't be fit, which is pretty titanic. We all were certain he'd start this game after his one-game suspension. He'd come in, after Fulham and be ready for this Leicester game, which is a lot bigger than the Fulham game. Well, I don't know, is it bigger? Some could say the Fulham game was bigger in context, but in terms of the reward of beating Leicester, the mood will shift entirely for Chelsea. If we beat Morecambe 4-0, expected to do that, beat Fulham away, and Liverpool and Tottenham have just dropped points to them. Yes, it's not an inspiring performance, but the result is big. And then move on to beat a title challenger in Leicester. Hopefully the mood will shift entirely. So it's massive, but Brendan Rodgers is a good coach. Seasoned. I know he's still relatively young, but he started when he was young. And of course, he's far more experienced than Frank Lampard, and he's built an excellent team and deserves a lot of credit, Brendan Rodgers. A lot of people will joke about him, he's got his Brentisms, a bit like The Office, but he's sort of settled a little bit more, and I think he's a really good coach. So big up to Brendan Rodgers. Now, Vardy looks like he's going to be fit for this game. Maddison's in form. They've got a very functional and devastating midfield. Leicester can play on the counter-attack. They can play possession football. They're comfortable changing their approach depending on the opponent. And against Chelsea, I wonder what kind of tactical approach they'd take if they try and, have the onus to keep the ball in attack, or if they let Chelsea sort of build their own downfall in having possession and then being vulnerable on transition, and Leicester might be happy to counter-attack on Chelsea and try and score some goals. So it could go either way in that sense, but a massive, massive, massive thing for Chelsea is who's going to play, who's going to be in the starting lineup. So let's move on to the next screen and talk about a lineup that I kind of more want to start than think will start. Here we go. I do believe it will be a 4-3-3. Edouard Mendy has to keep his place in goal. Of course, I don't think anyone would doubt or dispute that. Similarly, I think Ben Chilwell starts again. He'll be gagging to play his old club, you'd think, and hopefully that might give him a little bit of, drive to be the best he can be. I don't know. Players often play well against their old clubs. So Ben Chilwell at left back. I believe Old Man Silva will play 2 consecutive games in the space of a few days, which is the kind of thing we didn't think he'd end up doing, but I think he will, and I think Kurt Zouma hopefully will be brought back into the fold in this game. I'd like to think maybe he had a knock or something, that's why Rudiger played against Fulham, or maybe Frank Lampard wants to keep Rudiger happy, so he's like, I've got to play Rudiger every now and again. What's an opportunity? I guess I'll play him against Fulham because they're not as powerful and as good as Leicester. So maybe, only speculating of course, for this game, I'd bring back Zouma and I'd have the partnership of Thiago Silva and Kurt Zouma at the back. And hopefully Chelsea can complete their first choice back four with Reece James returning into the right back position. I love Azpilicueta, he's a professional, he's a leader, he represents Chelsea well, and he often puts in 6 or 7 out of 10s on the regs. But he's getting roasted more and more. I think he needs a bit of a rest, and I think Reece James needs to come back in to offer that dynamism down the right hand side. I really wanted to see it against Fulham, but perhaps he wasn't ready in terms of returning from injury. Hopefully he's ready for this game. Now the midfield is a massive situation because Kante's not ready to return after his suspension. So it's going to be either Jorginho or Billy Gilmour. Now of course everyone was gagging to see Billy Gilmour play against Fulham. We all know he's ready, he's good enough, and really Frank Lampard was leading the way in telling the world of football that he's ready and he's good enough, because he was starting him against Liverpool and Everton last season when no one thought he would play. So Frank needs to summon that inner courage or that inner belief that he had in Billy Gilmour and start him in this game. So similarly, what I said about Antonio Rudiger playing him in the least important game, maybe it's the same situation with Jorginho. Both big characters, Jorginho and Rudiger, feels like he needs to rotate them in. Maybe he feels like he can rotate them in to the Fulham game, but when it comes to this Leicester game, you've got to return Zouma, and maybe he holds Gilmour in a higher regard, so maybe he starts Gilmour in this game against Leicester. I'd really like to see that. I might be reaching a little bit, but hopefully Billy Gilmour starts in this game. Now Mason Mount, of course, has to start. I think he's been our player of the season so far, and he's been in excellent form. He obviously, the game against Fulham, he broke a record that's lasted 5 years in terms of a player creating chances in a single game, as well as scoring a goal himself. And you know, the rest of the midfield stuff he does, whether it's pressing, defending, occupying spaces, closing spaces, dropping deep, he does all of it. He's the first name on the team sheet at the moment, so Mason Mount to the left. And I'm going to say Kovacic again. I do want Kai Havertz to start. I just feel like throwing him in to this game against Leicester would be too much of a big ask. Kai Havertz is going to be an amazing player for Chelsea, but while he is still settling, and it does take time, you're going to have to nurse him in. I'd love to see him off the bench. I think that'd be really important, but I think to control the midfield, I would just bring in Kovacic again. He was a bit meh last time out, but he has the ability to control it, or at least progress the ball through the lines, and that will be important in this midfield battle. Now, on the left wing, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, I think Callum Hudson-Odoi will start this game. I think Frank Lampard's pretty much said, yes, he's been excellent, he deserves to start games. So when you say that, you've got to start him. And his favoured position, he's our most dangerous winger at the moment. I think we have 3 very, very, very talented wingers, but the one that's most in form and in confidence is Callum Hudson-Odoi, and his preferred native position is left wing. So therefore, you play Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left wing, and if you do that, you have to play a right winger, and you've got to choose between Hakim Ziyech and Pulisic. One of them's a native right winger with a wonderful left boot. You have to start Hakim Ziyech. Now Pulisic's been pretty good this season, but I don't want to start him on the right over Ziyech, and he doesn't start on the left over Hudson-Odoi. And you know, I don't want to start Hudson-Odoi on the right, so Ziyech for me starts. Plus, we need to remember Hakim Ziyech has an excellent relationship on that right hand flank with Reece James, who was absent last time out. So bring Reece James back in, rekindle that relationship with Ziyech, and that is the right hand flank looking good. And indeed the left hand flank with Chilwell and Callum Hudson-Odoi. And when it comes to a striker, if we do play on the counter attack, right? If we do play on the shoulder and soak up pressure, fine, play Timo Werner. Let him keep running in behind and the goal will come eventually. But I'm not sure we're going to do that, so I've selected Tammy Abraham. I think he looks the most positive. He's always got a great attitude on the pitch, and he scores goals. You know, Giroud scores goals as well, but you don't get the mobility. Tammy will run around and press and score goals and, you know, scrap to the end. So Tammy Abraham starts for me, and that's my lineup. So let's move on and talk about the game a little bit more. Right, so it's a huge, huge game, man. Listen, like I said at the top of the video, if Chelsea win, the mood changes entirely. It's 3 wins on the bounce in a couple of different competitions. You know, maybe if a couple of individuals perform well again, the narrative will change of players not performing well. You know, what if Timo Werner scores a goal or Havertz comes off the bench and scores a goal, Hudson-Odoi starts and has a man of the match performance, everything seems to be falling into the place. And if we win also, it sort of validates Frank Lampard's decision to start who he did start against Fulham and then eventually winning. So if he can navigate both these games with different lineups and 2 wins, the mood will change massively. But the truth is, man, right now it's a huge ask, and that's not because of Chelsea's poor form / confidence, or is partly because of that, but it's Leicester's form as well. They're like, absolutely title challengers at the moment. They are in high confidence, and it's probably a good time to play Chelsea, a bad time to play Leicester. But that's football, man. You can't make these excuses. You can evaluate the situation and the landscape and look at it, but that's all you can do, right? So if Chelsea win, good. If they lose, bad. But how bad? Like, if Chelsea lose to Leicester, does Frank Lampard worry for his job? I'm not so sure. It's so peculiar, isn't it? Because I've spoken about this situation so many times, how Chelsea want to invest in him. They want to not sack him, and they want to, nurture this long-term relationship. But if the belief goes from the board, he will get sacked. Similarly, all these players that signed for Chelsea that are really inspired by Frank Lampard's charm and his words, because he has got that. Whether you're Lampard in, you're Lampard out, you've got to admit he speaks incredibly well. He always says the right things. And a lot of players signed because of him. And, I think Timo Werner especially, The Athletic reported he signed to Chelsea when he could have gone to a few other clubs, because he was assured that Frank Lampard had a sort of long-term plan and future there, so he could implement what he pitched to Timo Werner. He said, look, I know Chelsea managers get sacked all the time, but this is different with me. I've been told it's different. They're going to give us time. And that was reported in The Athletic that that's going to happen. So that kind of goes against this narrative of he's going to get canned if it goes wrong. But ultimately, he will get canned if it goes wrong, so it's all a bit of a confusing paradox. Anyway, it's the manner of the performance, isn't it? Like, against Fulham, it was the result. And it's going to fluctuate between results and the manner of performance. If you get a bad result and a bad performance put together, then then he could be in trouble. If we if we lose 2-1 to Leicester away, and we score a great goal and it's pretty neck and neck, that's fine. I mean, ultimately, considering where they are in their development, that's sort of okay. If Chelsea get battered 4-0 by Leicester and we look hopeless and it should be more, that's when anything can happen. Anyway, I've rambled on enough. I've given you my opinion on the game. I want to hear your opinions and changes to my lineup. Who would you start? What are your score predictions? What do you think is going to happen? Get down in the comment section below and tell me. Please do consider dropping a like, because it supports me, and that's kind. Subscribe if you're new. Enjoy the football, and I will see you later.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought. Body bag the verse, outlined in chalk. In my life seen trouble, hustle on the double. Silence on the trigger like my pick got a muzzle. Yo, chick like to guzzle, bad boy stay in trouble. I only love this paper, sorry I don't. I laugh me, baby.